Violent West Midlands police constable finally charged after 3 assaults in just 4 days. The Crown Office kleptomaniac stole almost £92,000, £147,720 worth of drugs, a bus ticket and a sweet wrapper, and so much more. A misconduct hearing for a hungry Merseyside cop after crashing his police vehicle whilst in a rush to get home for dinner. Automatic discrimination. Garden Centre installs CCTV system that blocks entry to the store if you have no mask on. And police recruits in London are being paid whilst being purposely kept off the streets for fear that they may endanger themselves or others. This and so much more coming up. Now this week I am trialling putting out reports on Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Hopefully I'm going to be able to bring you more packed videos, but also it's going to enable me to have a little time to myself, as I've kind of been neglecting myself since I started these PAP reports. So we're going to see how it goes, but please do let me know what you think of the every other day reports at the end of the week. I'll really appreciate your input. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you appreciate the work I do, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as just £3 a month, which will enable me to continue providing this content. Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. Today is Monday the 19th of October 2020. On the 29th of April and the 2nd of May, I uploaded videos showing a violent West Midlands police constable first throwing a youngster to the ground and then kicking him. And then in the second video on the 2nd of May, a separate video surfaced showing what was allegedly the same constable punching a man whilst he was laying over the bonnet of a car. It came out a few days later that the same constable is believed to have been the one who tasered a man who was near a stolen car. Well, not long after that, police issued a statement that the cop was under investigation, but what we didn't know at the time is that 29-year-old PC Declan Jones committed those 3 offences over just a 4-day period. Yeah, he was almost on a bit of a rampage. Who knows, maybe it was a roid-induced rage. At the time, in a video on the 2nd of May, I'd been given a name by a supposed serving Thames Valley PC. Some of you will know who that is, as they often came on my live streams. I gave them the benefit of the doubt at the time, but as it couldn't be verified, I also made that very clear in the video. However, it turns out that the name she gave me was wrong. And in my normal tradition of righting any wrongs, I've updated the description on that video, but I've left the original description there too, as I don't like to delete things as it looks like I'm trying to hide something. But even though I've updated the description, I want to take the opportunity here to apologise for giving that Thames Valley Police Constable the benefit of the doubt. Whether she intended for me to get it into trouble for using the wrong name, or whether she gave me the name in good faith, I'll never know. But luckily, I'm not stupid enough to make the claim that it was 100% definitely the person whose name she gave me. Anyway, cracking on. All of the assaults occurred in April. Declan Jones has now been suspended from West Midlands Police Force and is set to appear at Coventry Magistrates Court on November the 18th. However, it's the charges laid against him that I find most interesting. In a statement, the IOPC said the charges are in connection with a series of ongoing investigations by the Independent Office for Police Conduct into allegations of excessive use of force by police officers in the city earlier this year. We began an independent investigation into the circumstances of the incident at Newtown following a voluntary referral from West Midlands Police on 30th of April. Our investigations in respect of the incidents at Aston and Handsworth followed complaints referred to us in May. We passed files of evidence from our inquiries to the Crown Prosecution Service, which has now authorised the charges. Sarah Hammond of the Crown Prosecution Service said the CPS has authorised the Independent Office for Police Conduct to charge Declan Jones, a West Midlands police officer, with 3 counts of common assault against 3 complainants. The allegations relate to incidents which took place between 20th and 23rd of April this year. The decision was made following careful consideration of the evidence presented to us by the IOPC. The Crown Prosecution Service reminds all concerned that criminal proceedings against PC Jones are now active and that he has a right to a fair trial. It is extremely important that there should be no reporting, commentary or sharing of information online which could in any way prejudice these proceedings. Common assault, or Section 39 Criminal Justice Act 1988, for those who don't know, is the lowest form of assault in law. Sentencingcouncil.org.uk say that a person is guilty of common assault if they either inflict violence on another person, however slight this may be, or make that person think they are about to be attacked. They do not have to be physically violent. For example, threatening words or raised fists could lead the victim to believe they are going to be attacked, and that is enough for the crime to have been committed. Other acts like spitting at someone may also be classed as common assault. The maximum sentence allowed by law for common assault is 6 months imprisonment, and cases can only be heard in a magistrate's court. If the assault is racially or religiously aggravated, the maximum sentence is 2 years imprisonment, and cases can be heard in the Crown Court as well. Now, common assault usually results in no real injury to the aggrieved person. However, in all 3 cases, the police constable used excessive force, either punched, kicked or allegedly tasered the victims, which would in reality result in assault occasioning actual bodily harm, or Section 47 offences against the Person Act of 1861. Sentencingcouncil.org.uk say that for this offence, the assault, which can be intentional or reckless as above, must have caused some physical harm to the victim. It does not need to be serious or permanent, but must be more than trifling or transient. Some psychiatric harm can also be covered by this offence, but must be more than just fear or anxiety. Although injuries that are more than transient or trifling can be classified as ABH, in practice, someone who causes no injury or injuries which are not serious is likely to be charged with common assault. The maximum sentence for ABH is 5 years imprisonment, and cases can be heard in a magistrate's court or Crown Court. Now, this is an opinion only. Kidney punching someone, kicking someone while they're on the floor and unlawfully tasing someone would expect to leave some kind of physical harm to the victim. But what do I know? It's not like I'm out to protect police from committing crimes against the public, is it? Now, as for the CPS saying that there should be no reporting, commentary or sharing of information online which could in any way prejudice these proceedings, all I've done is report what other outlets have reported and added the information from the Sentencing Council website, which is all in the public domain and available for anyone to search and find. So I've added nothing to this that's not already widely available for people to research themselves. Also, it says you should not rather than you must not. So, there you go. Dyfed-Powys police are investigating what's been alleged to have been asylum seekers currently housed at Penally Army Camp meeting with young girls at a Tenby skate park. Although the reports are said to be unconfirmed, the reports circulated on Facebook have claimed to have direct knowledge that male residents at the camp have been talking and exchanging contact information with local schoolgirls, some suggesting that they were in school uniform when talking with the men, with one local parent suggesting 2 girls were about 14 years old. Another post from a local on Facebook said, "So tonight a few of us concerned local parents decided to go to Tenby skate park. As we got there, 2 young girls were sat on the bench waiting for someone. Some kids told us that they were the ones talking to the men yesterday, exchanging Snapchat details and stuff. Then the men from the day before turned up, saw us and scurried off down the beach. The 2 girls then quickly wandered off. These girls were about 14. Pembrokeshire County Council said that they are unable to comment on the alleged incidents. However, a spokesperson said, "All I would say is that our schools regularly advise pupils not to engage with strangers." Yeah, because telling a 14-year-old not to do something is really going to stop them doing it, isn't it? A police spokesperson said, "We have received 2 reports of alleged inappropriate behaviour at the skate park in Tenby and are looking to speak to the people who contacted us. In the meantime, the skate park is now part of our patrol plans and we have linked in with local schools to reinforce the School Beat Stay Smart online messaging." Now, I have to say this, even if it upsets some of the viewers. Anyone who has any brain cells should know that this behaviour is common amongst asylum seekers. I know people myself who have been harassed and coerced by asylum seekers. Many of these people come from a place with a completely incompatible culture to our own and expect to be able to do the things they did at home here. To be fair, much of the establishment is allowing them to do it. These people have come to the UK illegally. If I do something that's illegal that can put other people's safety at risk, I get locked up. Why are people who have come here illegally, breaking the law, simply allowed to do what they want while being rewarded for it by the government paying them? I have nothing at all against people who come here legally through the correct channels, but can you imagine if any of us got caught in the USA having sneaked in, Australia or Spain even? I'm pretty sure we'd be locked up until they can send us back with maybe 3 meals a day and a temporary permanent roof and 4 walls till they can send us home. If someone sneaked into your home to live in your attic, the police would have plenty to say about that. Personally, I don't see the difference. There really needs to be more done, and instead of the government thinking about how mean they would look, they need to start thinking about the people who pay their wages and who they are supposed to be working for. Who can we trust if even those in the Office of Public Prosecution are as bent as a £9 note? 34-year-old Catherine Vaughan, a former Crown Office employee, which is the Scottish equivalent of our Crown Prosecution Service, was in charge of evidence. She was remanded in custody while a psychiatric report is prepared ahead of sentencing at Edinburgh High Court in November. Vaughan, while working for the Crown Office, admitted taking £91,932 in cash and drugs worth £147,720 from the Procurator Fiscal's office in Aberdeen between January 2011 and September 2019. She is also charged with stealing CCTV footage, audio tapes, DNA samples, bedding and confidential documents relating to prosecutions, passports, a lock safe, jewellery, matches, sanitary pads, a Kindle, a bus ticket, a sweets wrapper and bake stabbies. She was caught after bosses wanted to transfer her to another position. She confessed to police about what she had done. The prosecution lawyer, Alex Prentice QC, said the range of items seems to highlight the strangeness of Catherine Vaughan's behaviour. In spite of the best endeavours of the police, it remains unclear how she transported the products from the office to her home. The logistical difficulties must have been compounded by the fact that ordinarily she travelled by public transport. While some of them could easily have been hidden in a coat pocket or in a handbag, some of the items, for example the safe, which is small but rather heavy, would have presented her with much greater difficulty. Similarly, it remains unclear what happened to the money that she embezzled. One possibility, in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, is that she squandered it over a protracted period of time. The court heard Vaughan told her the production store had been left unattended for a bank holiday weekend. This caused senior managers to conduct an audit of the office and they found cash missing. On September the 27th, 2019, Police Scotland detectives arrived to conduct a probe. They interviewed Vaughan as a witness and told her that they needed to take a DNA sample from her. Mr. Prentice added at that point Vaughan spontaneously stated that she suffered from mental health issues, that she had been stealing cash productions from the production store throughout the year to subsidise her income, and that there were further cash productions in her home address. Vaughan was then cautioned but continued to confess to the police about what she had done. Police later searched her flat where she lived alone and found that she had stolen £91,832.82. They only managed to recover just over £1,300 of that, which had all been taken from the Fiscal's office. The court also heard police found 1.7 kilos of heroin, 2.4 kilos of cocaine, as well as quantities of crack cocaine, MDMA, cannabis, ketamine, methadone and diazepam. Well, you're in Scotland. You have all the crack and cocaine and heroin. I've got an idea how you can make some money back. After examining Vaughan's mobile phone, police found she had confessed her crimes to her mum in a text message. It read, "Mum, I'm so sorry for what is about to happen. What I did, it was never meant to hurt you. I became desperate and was ashamed at what I'd become and didn't have the heart to tell you that I've been stealing from my work. Know that I love you and Dad and feel such an idiot for letting it get this far. I understand if you want to hate me. I don't blame you. I'm so sorry for breaking your heart and how ashamed you must be on me. Please forgive me." Vaughan's defence told the court, from a very early stage, the accused has indicated that she does not want to contest this charge. There is a strangeness to her offending. I'm at a loss to explain why she had a thing like a DNA sample in her possession. Ms. Vengochia said the court would have to obtain a background report before sentencing and that she'd reserved her mitigation until a later hearing. She also asked bail to be granted to Vaughan ahead of the sentencing hearing. However, Lord Beckett refused to grant bail and remanded her in custody. He said, "You have pleaded guilty to an extremely serious course of criminal conduct. You no longer enjoy the presumption of innocence and, in the circumstances, I am not prepared to grant you bail." Oh dear. Now let's turn our attention to the other side, those supposed to be there to defend us. 45-year-old solicitor Kevin McPherson, along with being what appears to be a bit of a sex pest, admitted to finding a statement from a young girl in a child sex abuse case titillating and sexually gratifying at a hearing held by the Scottish Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal. The filthy cunt who had worked as a solicitor since '98, was acting on behalf of a boy accused of taking a young girl to a gym before carrying out a sexual act. The information came to light after messages discovered during routine IT work at the firm they worked were found in a thread spanning some 2 years. Macpherson and a colleague had been discussing sex in explicit details, saying she was his only stimulation in life, and described her as elegant, and said in one message he had a good view of her chest. The woman carrying out the IT work reported him to a legal watchdog after he sent her twisted messages relating to evidence in a child sex abuse case he was working on in June 2012. He said, "You would have loved what I was reading this morning," before adding a statement of a little girl talking about what she saw in a gym. She contacted the Scottish Children's Reporters Administration in August 2013 over concerns for the child witness, and he was referred to prosecutors who ruled no criminal action should be taken against him. Along with that, he pestered a trainee at the firm, making her feel like a sex toy after discussing her with his colleague in the emails, and began begging her to join him for dinner, take part in social activities with him, and sent her 136 text messages outside office hours. He left his £96,000 a year role with the firm and set his own business up from home, KFM Law. His lawyer, David Burnside, said he had an honest and upstanding reputation in the Isle of Lewis, and being struck off would be a significant blow to him because he would have to give up his business and relocate. He also claimed social behaviours were different in 2011, and Macpherson, who attended the hearing, had shown remorse and admitted his misconduct. The Scottish Solicitors Discipline Tribunal found him guilty of professional misconduct by engaging in an improper course of conduct towards the trainee and making reference to the young girl's evidence. In a written ruling, the Scottish Solicitors Discipline Tribunal said the tribunal considered that strike-off was the only appropriate sanction. The respondent admitted that he found the sexual abuse of children titillating, sexually gratifying, and had used those conversations to further a sexual conversation. Employees, colleagues and clients were therefore at risk. This conduct in particular was a danger to the public and was likely to seriously damage the reputation of the legal profession. He demonstrated no insight into his conduct or how he would deal with such a situation differently in the future. It showed the respondent was not fit person to be a solicitor, although no concerns were raised over the standard of Macpherson's legal work. On the 17th of September, we spoke about Merseyside Police Constable PC John Byrne, who crashed his unmarked police vehicle whilst on Blues and Twos, whilst not responding to an emergency. In fact, he was trying to get back to the station quickly to finish some paperwork so he can get home, as his wife had sent him a picture of his dinner. Travelling at up to 80 miles an hour through Liverpool and running red lights in the unmarked vehicle, along with his colleague PC May, they ended up crashing into a BMW on Allerton Road. After the crash, the investigation began, which involved collecting data from the onboard computer system, a bit like an aeroplane's black box, which showed, along with the high speeds and activation of the emergency system, the crash happened while the plod was still doing 20 miles an hour, although there had been a period of braking to 30 miles an hour consistent with approaching a junction before accelerating again as the road bends right and crosses a junction before the vehicle hit the anchors again and dropped to 18.9 miles an hour at the moment of impact. Byrne appeared at Manchester Crown Court last month, where Judge Miss Recorder Mary Loram, QC, told the PC, "Your job was to protect the public from harm. However, on November 2nd last year, you did the opposite of that and you endangered the safety of members of the public, particularly other road users." The judge accepted PC Byrne had been suffering from marriage difficulties, boo-hoo, and had been working long hours. "You wanted no more than to go home to your wife as soon as you could. It's not an excuse, but it's important to put cases such as this into context," the judge said. PC Byrne of Bishop Road in St Helens admitted one count of dangerous driving and was disqualified from driving for 12 months and was handed a 12-month community order, must also carry out 40 hours of unpaid work, and must pass an extended driving test before he will be allowed back on the roads. He was also ordered to pay £535 costs. Well, Byrne is now to face his misconduct hearing on Tuesday, which will determine whether a precedent is set within Merseyside Police to allow them to misuse the emergency system on their vehicles, which they all pretty much do anyway, or if Byrne will be made an example of in the hope that other police only use their emergency lights and sirens when they're heading to a real emergency and not simply heading out to assist a simple stop and search which requires no additional police presence, simply because they have nothing better to do. Now, I do hope that no one is under the illusion that the changes we are seeing blamed on COVID, are temporary changes. You would be wise to rethink your stance if you do. Many changes have come in law which have had their very own legislation written up when there was legislation already in place to be used in temporary situations. But that was ignored in favour of a piece of legislation that would really test us to the limits. The changes in the way that the state is now encouraging people to grass on their neighbours if they feel they're not following the state narrative. Those not under fear of virus that, by all accounts, should be seeing people dying in the streets due to backed up hospitals must be dealt with swiftly, because as long as there are people who don't believe the government but believe other independent scientific advice, then the narrative is at risk. Maybe this is why North Yorkshire Police wants to get its hands on some of the £30 million being paid to government and police across England in order for them to set up a rapid response team of COVID cars to deal with tip-offs about rule breakers. Yes, North Yorkshire Police want to set up a squad of highly skilled, specially trained advanced drivers to get to alleged breaches of COVID rules, like having mum or dad over at the same time, or not wearing your mask out in public, but failing to wear your yellow armband to highlight the fact to everyone that you may have a disability. Julia Mulligan, Police and Crime Commissioner, said the force is developing proposals which will be presented to the Home Office. It aims to have specifically crewed vehicles primed to react to calls. Seriously, Julia? Did you really just say primed to react to calls about incidents that aren't even unlawful, that aren't even criminal? If they were, then people would be getting arrested, not issued with fixed penalty notices. And this is an appropriate use of money? This is an appropriate use of police time? They're just going to sit in the station till the bell goes, like at a fire station, before rushing out to their vehicle and speeding, with blues and twos on for a non-emergency, I might add, just to issue someone who might be standing too close to another person a fucking fine. I'm sorry, but you are one mad cunt. Mulligan told the York and North Yorkshire Police Fire and Crime Panel the force intended to spend part of the £280,000 on paying for overtime to boost enforcement, including patrols at COVID hotspots. The meeting was told the force was set to focus efforts on upholding rules surrounding licensed premises. What about upholding policing principles and getting the police to uphold their attestation? Pretty sure it says in there you're supposed to uphold fundamental human rights. Seems to me you're actively helping to erode them, biatch. Why are people not opposing these kinds of ridiculous moves? No, we haven't enough money. No. But you're happy to take police off of normal duties to set up a fucking COVID response. Where is it going to end? It's utter madness. A garden centre in Mirfield, West Yorkshire, Whitley's Garden Centre, has apparently integrated a system to their entry of their centre that appears to use AI to detect if you're wearing a mask or not, only to block you entry if you're not wearing one. The mask detecting CCTV is reportedly being introduced to shops across the country, according to a report from Birmingham Live. The detection system is called Covered and was developed by Yorkshire-based technology provider Vidicon. It works out whether or not an approaching shopper is wearing a mask, before displaying a message on the screen to allow or deny them access. Those who aren't wearing one are simply refused entry automatically. Simply refused entry, does it? Well, that sounds like a breach of the Equalities Act to me. Pretty sure that under section 29(5)(a), a service provider must not, in providing the service, victimise a person as to the terms on which the service is provided. Oh, hang on. I'm sure that being directly discriminated against, as under section 13 of the same act, is a breach. After all, a person discriminates against another if, because of a protected characteristic, the person treats another less favourably than they would treat others. I might add that if one of these store workers, where this system is implemented, asks you why you're exempt and tries to get you to tell them, then you would also be wise to remind them that they are in breach of the Equalities Act section 26, whereby a person harasses another if they engage in unwanted conduct related to the disability and the conduct has the purpose or effect of violating one's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating or offensive environment. So I'm not quite sure what these people are actually playing at, but I'd sure as hell make sure they knew about this if they were trying to prevent me from going about my day as someone who is exempt from wearing a face mask. What I find terrifying is the wording in the next sentence. Whitley's got the covered system up and running last week and plans to use it to control customers' behaviours at the main entrance to the store. control people's behaviour? I'm going to suggest that if anyone watching this channel goes there or is thinking of going there, don't. Who the hell do these people think they are to suggest that people's behaviour needs controlling because they're exempt from wearing face coverings? Whitley said they've actually seen a 50% decrease in customer non-compliance. Personally, I'd like to see a 50% decrease in customers. Peter Williams, General Manager of Whitley, said customers and employee safety should be a top priority for all retailers in the current environment. And maybe you want to rethink that, as I'm pretty sure you should be taking into account all of the facts and all of the situations that might occur before making a statement that discriminates against people that you deem to be unsafe to others. James Ritchie from cctv.co.uk said the new system is fantastic and helps both retailers and customers. He said the technology is just fantastic. The CCTV system automatically allows or denies access to the shop and means staff don't have to be put at risk from difficult customers complaining, or potentially worse. He added retailers are working so hard to stay open during these most difficult times, and this system means staff aren't in the firing line from customers who are unhappy about current restrictions. The other side of using an automated system is that it gives customers who are worried about the virus confidence as they enter a tightly controlled, secure COVID-19 store. Absolutely incredible how people are being automatically refused entry to the premises, even though they have every lawful and legal right to enter. Even government advice is not to challenge people about their exemptions, and let's also remember that company policy does not trump your rights or the Equality Act. By the way, did you know that those who discriminate against you are personally liable and can, if taken to court, have to cough up a fine of anywhere between £900 and £9,000, if my information is still correct? Now, if that wasn't bad enough, how do you feel about your data rights being breached by the NHS after it's been confirmed that police are going to be sharing information by the NHS of those supposed to be self-isolating in order for them to go door knocking and check on them? Now, don't get me wrong, if someone's ill with something that can be caught by others, then it would be the right thing to do, self-isolate. I mean, just as you would if you had the measles. But for the NHS to now share data with the public, which was bound to happen, but was never mentioned at the start, is an abuse. No one should be sharing our data without express consent. The fact that NHS waiting until it had 16 million users of the app in order to do this is, in my opinion, a disgusting move. Especially seeing as if you're down with the virus and the police knock on your door, if it's that bad, most people will just ignore the door anyway. I certainly would. In fact, I ignore it to everyone unless it's the postman. And with the National Police Chief Council saying just weeks ago that police will only knock twice to see if you're self-isolating before giving up, seems like a bit of a waste of time and money to me. However, Michael Gove has defended police being given data on people told to self-isolate through NHS Test and Trace, saying that officers are operating in a very proportionate way. The Department of Health and Social Care said police forces will have access to information on a case-by-case, enabling them to know if an individual has been told to self-isolate. Well, that's not case-by-case then, is it? That's every case of self-isolation. Use your fucking brain. Gove said, I think that actually the behavioural effects show that the majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people, want to be part of the national effort and fight the virus. And of course, there will be some, a very, very small minority, who will be, heedless of the consequences of their actions. So more behavioural talk. This is not about controlling a virus. This is about controlling you and your behaviour, which is why everybody's talking about it. Those who fail to self-isolate without reasonable justification could have their name, address and contact details passed on to the local authority and then to the police, according to the Department for Health and Social Care guidance, which again is madness. And the only way they could know if you've been out and about is by tracking your phone, tracking you. I installed the app on my spare phone and leave it at home to see what happens. I've never had to input any contact details, so where are they getting them from? This is not on. They are accessing information about you that you have not given, unless you've been silly enough to complete your details at the start on a scrap piece of paper at your local pub. In a statement, a spokesperson said it is a legal requirement for people who have tested positive for COVID-19 and their close contacts to self-isolate when formally notified to do so. The Department for Health and Social Care has agreed a memorandum of understanding with the National Police Chief Council to enable police forces to have access on a case-by-case basis to information that enables them to know if a specific individual has been notified to self-isolate. The Memorandum of Understanding ensures that information is shared with appropriate safeguards and in accordance with the law. No testing or health data is shared in this process. No testing or health data is shared in the process. Well, yes it is. Because when you give the data, when you're telling the police that a person should be self-isolating, that is ultimately giving them the health and testing data. What kind of idiot is this spokesperson? Cockwombles. Newly recruited police in Waltham Forest are being kept off the streets and paid because it's too risky to put them to work after their training. I kid you not. The recruits have so little training that they're not allowed on the streets for weeks in case they endanger themselves or other people. Borough Inspector Marcus Walton told Waltham Forest Council's Community Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, October the 13th that training now only lasts around 8 weeks, most of which is done online, compared to the 36 weeks he received when he joined in the 1980s, and means new officers are not even allowed to leave the station for their first 2 to 3 weeks. The need to properly train new officers is so great that he said there were close to 20 officers who had been taken off Waltham Forest streets just to train others. The risk to police, to colleagues that are going out there with them, and our reputation and their own safety is too high, he said. Some of them would get themselves into trouble or end up saying something inappropriate or reacting inappropriately because they had not been given appropriate training. That burden is pushed back to local officers, where you have had to take close to 20 officers off the streets to work with new officers to try to start skilling them. What a joke! Now, there was more to this report, but it all centred around black people and how they're disproportionately targeted by police. And to be honest, I still think that until people start to realise that we are all fucking discriminated against, and as long as people keep going on about colour, sex, religion, then the problems will never be fixed. So I refuse to say any more about that in this report. PC Leighton Phillips, or rather former PC Leighton Phillips, was off duty on his way home from the Wales v Italy Six Nations in February this year on a train. He decided to touch up 2 sisters by stroking their legs. But we discussed this on Friday's Bad Bits, so I'll not cover what was said. Instead, you can watch that. I'll link to it up here. At Swansea Crown Court last month, Phillips was made the subject of a 24-month community order with a rehabilitation requirement and must abide by an electronically monitored nightly curfew for the next 3 months, and was put on a sex offenders register for 5 years. Well, his misconduct hearing was last week as well. And the information is more shocking than I first thought, because in the reports from last week it simply said young girls. Young girls could be 16 or 17. But now we find out the extent of this pervert's offending, because it now appears that Leighton Phillips didn't just touch 2 young girls. He touched up an 11-year-old and 14-year-old. At the time, he was challenged by the girl's father, in reply to which Phillips responded, "I'm a police officer," which in the mind of anybody these days should be a huge red flag anyway. The misconduct hearing panel found that due to not being able to cover it up, they had to take action, and so said if Phillips hadn't already resigned, he would have been sacked. Chief Constable Bangham said, "The conduct of PC Phillips brings discredit on the force and undermines public confidence in it. Despite admissions to gross misconduct and his resignation, he has limited his regret to a one-line statement which reads, 'I'm really sorry this matter has caused embarrassment to the force and my family.' But there is no mention of his victims." Phillips will also be placed on the College of Policing barred list. I wonder why they didn't find any reference to the ages of the girls in the last reports I read. Now, I used to know a man who spent a considerable amount of time in prison. Whenever he was let out, he wanted to go back because his friends were there, because he had no worries, because he got fed, didn't have to worry about rent or bills, and literally just enjoyed the amenities. I mean, he would steal a car, drive it to the police station, and then go in and tell them he'd stolen it. PlayStations, Xboxes, TV, radio, pool tables. I mean, what's there not to like about prison? But the problem is, this is one of the reasons that some people don't care about going to prison, and so it doesn't act as a deterrent. A man who was out on licence from jail armed himself with a knife and reported himself to police, just so he could get locked up again. Blackburn magistrates heard it was the second time that Nathan Woods had tried to get himself recalled on prison licence, but the first time he threw eggs at 2 police constables just resulted in a warning from the probation service. Homeless 25-year-old Woods, and there's your reason for wanting back in right there, pleaded guilty to possession of a bladed article in Green Road, Colne, 2 charges of assaulting an emergency worker and theft of medication from a vet's. He was sentenced to a total of 21 weeks in prison after the court heard he had been recalled on prison licence until February 2022. Carl Gaffney, prosecuting, said on January 31st, Woods had walked into Stanley House Vet, picked up a packet of animal medication and left. The motivation was to take the tablets himself, said Mr Gaffney. The risk to the community was small and the loss to the vets minimal, but the potential damage to him was huge, which probably tells you about his state of mind at the time. He said when police approached Woods after being told of a man carrying a knife, he put the blades down and held out his hands to be handcuffed. Jonathan Taylor, defending, said since his release on prison licence, his client had problems with accommodation, eventually becoming homeless, and his relationship failed. Things quickly spiralled out of control, said Mr Taylor. He said, following the incident when he threw eggs at the police officers, Woods had contemplated suicide. He decided the only way he was going to get the help he needed was to be returned to custody. It was a quite deliberate act to make sure he was arrested and returned to prison, said Mr Taylor. He had the knife on him but didn't cause any problems with it, but was fully compliant with the officers who responded to the call. And it makes you wonder why the system is designed to give criminals such an easy life. Don't get me wrong, I know some mad stuff goes on in jail and you have to be careful, but once you work out who to talk to and who to stay away from, life in jail really doesn't appear that bad. And once you're used to it, why would you want to come out knowing you're going to have to start finding money for rent and bills and food to feed yourself? And to be honest, I'd probably eat better if I was in jail than I do now. But then you wouldn't have all this wonderful content from me, would you? Former Metropolitan Police Sergeant Richard Skinner would now be former Metropolitan Police Sergeant Richard Skinner. Had former Metropolitan Police Sergeant Richard Skinner not already resigned? That does actually make sense if you listen to it properly. After a misconduct hearing that was held on Wednesday the 14th of October, Skinner wasn't found to have been skinning up whilst on duty, but instead provided a positive with-cause drugs test for cocaine. A with-cause drugs test simply means that they have a reason to ask for the test rather than one of the random ones that they're asked to carry out. Skinner was found to have breached the standards of professional behaviour in relation to fitness for work and discreditable conduct. Assistant Commissioner Helen Ball said she had considered all of the evidence and found former Police Sergeant Skinner to have breached the standards of professional behaviour at the level of gross misconduct. And had Skinner still been serving, he would have been dismissed without notice. 38-year-old Lancashire Police Detective Constable Jetinda Bunga is due to appear at magistrates. 38-year-old Lancashire Police Detective Constable Jetinda Bunga is due to appear at Manchester Magistrates Court tomorrow, October the 20th, after being charged with 3 counts of misconduct in public office following an independent Office for Police Conduct investigation. It is alleged that Bunga had sought relationships with 2 vulnerable women he met during the course of his duties and took or otherwise obtained photographs of 4 other women without their permission. You see, I said this on Friday, the amount of coppers who simply cannot help themselves when there is a broken, vulnerable woman for them to take advantage of. They're on it like flies round shit. I genuinely feel for the vulnerable women in today's society having to put up with this kind of stuff when all they need is nothing more than for the police to do their job and not hit on them. On the 3rd of October, we mentioned retired Detective Inspector Tim Irison, Detective Sergeant Oliver Detective Sergeant Gregory Wilcox, former PC Craig Bannerman, Training Detective Constable Andrew Ferguson and PC James Oldfield from Hampshire Police, who are all accused of making comments of a discriminatory nature, including homophobic, racist and sexist remarks, whilst working at Basingstoke's North Hampshire Police Investigation Centre between March and April 2018. Their misconduct hearing started today, and what's expected to be a 3-week process following a 17-month investigation. The hearing had been scheduled for April but was delayed because of coronavirus. It was again delayed last week because of the availability of a panel member. But it is now underway, and I will, of course, keep you updated on any info that comes from that hearing. Huge thank you to all of the channel supporters, every single one of you. Your support is truly appreciated and massively helps. And that is all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police, and of course, other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video, there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.